This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
Hello everyone and welcome to Monday's Blood Red podcast, where there was only one item on the agenda, of course. Liverpool yesterday defeated Everton 1-0 to progress to the fourth round of the FA Cup. Their goal scorer was not even born the last time the Blues won at Anfield, and half that starting 11 would probably have tested positive for Cowpole if they'd done tests after the match. Such was the youthful nature of Jurgen Klopp's side. I'm Sean Bradbury, your host for today, and to discuss that derby, that historic derby with me, we have Ian Doyle. Doyle, how are you getting on?
I'm really happy with that preparation that you put into that.
It's like David Brent doing his jokes from his past.
Were you watching Ricky Gervais the Golden Globe last night or something?
That's where I get all my best material.
Yeah.
We also have Joe Rimmer. Speaking of David Brent, how are we getting on?
That's better. You didn't have to read that.
Exactly.
One,
Off the cuff.
Are you reading these? I'll put it down here.
We also have Matt Addison. Matt,
hello. Yes.
how's checks with you?
Yeah, good. Just about born the last time Everton won at Anfield. So
we should have used you
quite as young
instead of Curtis. Yeah. Well, on to the big question, and this big question was posed by Ian Doyle in his post-match analysis, which I'm sure everyone has read. Doyley, you called this possibly the greatest ever derby win for Liverpool. Explain your answer.
Well, well, if you read it, you'd know. But the answer for anybody who hasn't read it, and shame on you if you haven't, but basically, it's obvious, isn't it? Everton were their first choice team with all the players that were available. A team, okay, they got beat by Man City, but they've been in decent form. New manager, they got the new manager bounce, and they're playing against the Liverpool team, which, okay, they've won God knows how many games in a row. But it was a Liverpool team that we knew was going to be a completely scratched team, full of youngsters, which it was, full of fringe players, which it was. And there was obviously the suggestion that perhaps Jurgen Klopp wasn't really that bothered about the FA Cup. And, he had 8,000 Everton fans there making a bit of a din, bit of a racket. They all came thinking they knew what was going to happen in the sense of Everton's best chance in years, and they didn't want to mess it up. And ultimately, that's what did happen. I just think it's the way that Liverpool played as well. I mean, they rode the luck a little bit in the first half. Everton made the most of the obvious defensive uncertainty that Liverpool had, playing so many youngsters in there. Nat Phillips, that was his first ever game for Liverpool. Neco Williams, it was second start, and then Yasser Larouci had to come on after about 9 minutes, wasn't it, when James Milner got injured, and that was his first senior game as well. And then so you had the senior defender in terms of experience was Joe Gomez, and he's only 22, so that says a lot. But they just played, once they got over that first half, and even then Liverpool played the better football in the first half, didn't they? Everton made the most of when Liverpool were messing about a little bit at the back and they made mistakes. Klopp said the same thing after the game. He said it wasn't as if they massively cut us open with their good play, it came from our own errors. Liverpool cut that out in the second half, and you could tell the longer that second half was going on that Liverpool were going to win, and they ended up getting the win with Curtis Jones' goal, which was a great goal. Anybody who's seen him play for the under-23s or the under-18s, or in fact the under-19s, will know he's been capable of doing that for years. He certainly he doesn't lack confidence, does Curtis, and so did the rest of the Liverpool team. The youngsters who came in all did superb. They played exactly the way they've been playing for the under-23s, the under-19s, under-18s, and in answer to the question, it's the greatest probably because it was a Liverpool team that was put together, never ever played before. An Everton team were on the up. Such a massive game, an FA Cup game. It wasn't like a league game where they could draw it. If it was you lose, you were out. There was no second chances here. And it was played in front of about 50,000 people, live on television, not just to Sky, but also to BBC. So everybody in the country could have watched it if they wanted. And they'd have seen a Liverpool team with these kids just schooled, the experienced players in Everton's team who, I have to be honest, a lot of you know I covered Everton for quite a long time, nearly 20 years. Been watching Everton for 35 years. That's the worst. Second half is the worst I can ever remember them play. And it wasn't just down to them. It was down to the fact that Liverpool's enthusiasm, talent, application, all of that just basically blew them away. And the crowd played their part as well. So altogether, you could see Klopp at the end was saying, even if we'd have lost that game, he loved every single second of it. But they managed to win it, and that's probably why it's the best.
Joe, I think Doyle makes a good case there. Follow that as your challenge. But was it really better than Origi in the 96th minute, Rush scoring a ton of goals, Andy Carroll at Wembley? Does it beat all of these?
That's different. Sorry to interrupt you there, Joe.
Well,
I think that's different in the sense that they were great derby moments. Would you say Liverpool's performance, I'll ask you, Joe, yesterday was better? Yeah, was better than the one with the Origi goal.
The 96.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I get where Doyley's coming from. I have to say, I've always felt that the FA Cup is the greatest cup competition
magical,
in the history of
some would
football.
say.
It's magical. Add a few more cliches, and it just felt different, didn't it? It just felt like everyone was like, "Oh, don't do it, Klopp. Don't play all these youngsters and hand them the chance to end this Anfield hoodoo." And it wasn't just like Doyle was saying, and it is hard to follow because I think you've made some fantastic points, but it wasn't just that they rode the luck and got through. It was that they schooled them. They were the better side from. I know they gave up chances early doors, but they were the better side from the minute go till the end. And I mean, I wonder whether people will finally listen to Klopp when he says, "Look, I don't want to sign just anyone and everyone because we've got some really good youngsters." Because look, would you really want to sign another right back to stop Neco Williams progressing? Would you really want to sign another midfielder and not let Curtis Jones knock on the door? I mean, they're two of the most exciting youngsters I think I've seen since I've been watching Liverpool. Curtis Jones especially just looks like he's got the lot. And to me, when he scored, it felt like the Gerrard Sheffield Wednesday, the Rooney versus Arsenal. It felt like his moment that says I've arrived. And then just 10 minutes after that, when they were like playing balls up to him and his chest was puffed out and he was running around that pitch like he belonged. And he does belong, and I think we'll be seeing a hell of a lot of Curtis Jones in the future and probably a few more Derby winners the way he plays. It was a fantastic win. I don't know whether it's the best. I think they're all good in their own ways. I know it's a bit of a cop out answer, isn't it? But I mean, Andy Carroll, anyone that was there, it was brilliant. Origi, crazy. Some of the 4-0s, the 5-2 even this season, all great in their own right. But it just felt like it felt extra satisfying. And not just because I was getting free drinks.
He wasn't going to mention that.
Well, I got one free drink.
Moving quickly on from that, Matt Addison, I think Joe's kind of summed it up there. There's a hell of a lot of Derby wins to pick from if you're trying to highlight the greatest one that Liverpool have ever had. But where does that stand for you?
I think it's got to be up there because of the circumstance. I think going into the game, Everton were the favourites, and it's not very often that's the case at Anfield. I think when you look at the team that Liverpool put out, again, on paper, didn't look particularly strong, but then they come in and they just look so cohesive. And anybody who's watched the under-18s, the under-23s over the last few months, few years, even you sort of see that they play in the same way as the first team do. But to actually step up into a first team environment at Anfield in front of all those fans on TV, as Doyle said before, it was just such an impressive performance. So from that perspective, it's got to be right up there. But at the same time, it's the third round of the FA Cup. Not the most prestigious it's gonna get for Merseyside derbies, but I mean, just on the balance of it, it was just
sign off the FA Cup.
it was just so nice to watch and sort of be able to see these young players who people will have heard of and seen, but as Joe said, it's sort of like a coming of age performance for some of these lads. And imagine how Curtis Jones must be sat feeling right now, and he can go into Melwood and sort of, I know he's been training there for a long time, but he can sort of feel like he's one of those players now. That was a big moment to define him as a senior Liverpool player rather than just someone who's training with the first team.
Absolutely. Well, before we get into the nuts and bolts of it and go through the individual players, I want to wind the clock back to 3:01 yesterday. And I'm pleased with the lineup we've got here because we've got the FA Cup. You're an FA Cup purist. Is that fair assessment of you, Doyle? We've got the FA
There's
Cup
nothing pure
skeptic.
about Doyle.
Well, perhaps not, but is that due to the FA Cup?
Very nice thing to say.
We have the skeptic.
Could you retract that statement immediately?
I retract it. I praised you at the start. Said you made some fantastic points.
Could you retract that statement as well?
Carrot and stick from Joe today. We have Joe, of course, as much as he was swayed by the magic yesterday. I think that there was other reasons behind that. We have Matt, who I hope is the voice of reason here. But when you saw that,
suggesting that we're not the voice of reason.
Well, perhaps. When you saw that team news drop, Doyle, what was your initial reaction?
Honestly, my initial reaction was I thought it was stronger than I thought it was going to be. Well, to be honest, my initial reaction was I knew what the team was an hour before, so I wasn't that surprised. But I must admit, I thought personally I would have played a few more of the senior players, but the fact that Miller got injured after 6, 7, 8, went after the 9 minutes suggests that Klopp was right. The fact that Liverpool won suggests Klopp was right. It'll suggest that I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to that. But I mean, if you get a bit deeper into the competition, there's every chance that if Liverpool play that team again away from home at say, as I'm absolutely convinced they're going to draw Wolves or Man United away when they do the draw later today, that team would not struggle, but would find it a lot harder than they did. But than they did against Everton. But that's just the way that it goes. I mean, You look at the team, Nat Phillips. Clearly the only reason he got brought back was to play in that game, and possibly the fourth round as well, because he's going to go back to Stuttgart with Germany. Imagine being him. Imagine he's played half a season in Germany. A lot of people have just forgotten about him. And let's be brutally honest here, including us, completely forgot about him. Comes back, and then he made one or two errors very early on, but by the end, Calvert-Lewin and Richarlison they were nothing. They didn't do anything in the second half, and that was down to him and also Joe Gomez. So, yeah, I must admit that when the team came up, I thought, but then, Klopp got it right again, didn't he?
Klopp was right, Carragher was right, Joe was right. That's what we take from that, don't we?
Well, this was going to be my question. You had Carragher on side with your take on it. Was it what you expected then?
It was actually a little bit. I don't. The word weaker is particularly fair, but I didn't expect Pedro Chirivella to start, for example. I just didn't expect that at all. So it was a bit younger than I expected, but
really,
I think so. Yeah,
I thought it was stronger than I expected.
I thought that he might start. Chirivella was fantastic yesterday. Really, really good. I think hugely satisfying for him. And if he never plays another game for Liverpool, he'll always have that. And bumped into him in town. Actually, one of our reporters bumped into his missus in town, literally, the day before. And if he never plays again for Liverpool, he'd be very, very satisfied with that. I think there's some quotes from him today that Gorsty spoke to him after the game, and I think he was hugely satisfied. Said, I've waited a long time for that. But seeing his name on the team sheet, I just didn't think. I thought we would see a couple of senior pros and then maybe Jones in the midfield or something like that. But I certainly didn't expect him, Lallana, and Jones to make up the midfield. I thought that looked a very, very inexperienced one, but it was brilliant. And we shouldn't just praise the young players, because I thought the senior pros in there, Lallana was absolutely fantastic, really good, led by example. Was a proper captain when he took the armband off Milner, and took the pressure off them when he needed to by keeping the ball, and his turns were all coming off, and I honestly thought it was the most mature performance we've seen from Lallana since he's come to Liverpool. I thought he was great. Joe Gomez, I think it did him the world of good to play almost as an older player in that team. He looked like he sort of took the responsibility in the back line. I think that'll do him some good going on, and Everton's players were quiet, and Adrian I thought was excellent again. Great attitude, great fella to have around the squad. They must be made up with him. Origi was always a threat, wasn't he? Forced Pickford into that great save. So, the team took me a little bit by surprise, but the performance took me a lot more by surprise.
Absolutely. Well, Matt, we saw quite a few changes, I think, when the 5-2, the league derby came round there last month. And I think that took a few people by surprise. But what was your take when you saw that team sheet yesterday?
I think when I initially saw it, I was really surprised. I thought he'd go slightly stronger, just because it's a bit of a risk when you put young players in a game of that magnitude. How will they cope, and will they suffer if it goes badly? Obviously, we know now in hindsight that it went really well. But I was slightly surprised to begin with. Pedro Chirivella, I think, was unbelievably good, but I think he exceeded even his own expectations in that game. I've seen him a number of times and thought, he's a decent player, and you wondered sort of what level is he going to reach, but that was by far and away the best I've seen him play. I thought he went up to a completely new level and sort of took on that responsibility. Obviously, he's 22 now, is he? And he's sort of at that age where he needs to start doing that, and I thought that was great to see. And Neco Williams as well was another one that you thought, how much has he been tested? He's obviously been in the side for the 5-5 draw with Arsenal, and obviously did well enough there to get an opportunity again. But just for all of them, really, all of those young players, and for Lallana to step up as well, I thought initially you look at the team sheet and think maybe that's a bit weak, but then it didn't turn out like that at all. So it was a bit of a gamble, but one that paid off.
So when you consider Chiravella, he played in the FA Cup for Liverpool 4 years ago against West Ham away, where they got knocked out 2-1, was it? Where Coutinho did the free kick under the wall. He was playing in that game. I think he must have played in the earlier game as well, because it was a replay, and he played Exeter in the round before that. So he did have a bit of experience, and he's been out on loan. I think the players that you mentioned, the senior players, what was interesting is that Adrian, Gomez, Lallana, Origi, straight down the middle. I know Origi played off to the left, but he spent a lot of his time in the middle. And even then, Minamino, who new played for Liverpool, but he's still got a lot of experience. Straight down the middle, they had at least one player who either had a youngster next to him or or either around, or you could provide that kind of spine through the team, which is something that you saw against Aston Villa in the League Cup game. They didn't really have that as such, and that's where they kind of fell down. That's why the game against Arsenal, MK Dons, they could play in the League Cup, they could play a certain amount of youngsters because they had that many senior players in those strong positions, but against Villa they didn't, and that's what happened. So I think Joe's right that the senior players do deserve credit. That's the second time I've said Joe's right.
Wow, what's going on here?
I feel like Doyle and I'd be moving in with each other soon.
Festive season.
I'm not going to St Helens though. You can come to St Michael's in the Hamlet.
No, it's St Helens is the future. You know this.
We'll see. We'll talk about it afterwards.
Yeah.
We'll stay with you, Doyle. Takumi Minamino, obviously, you've just given him a mention there, but quite a welcome to Liverpool and indeed the derby. What a way to make your debut.
Well, the first 20 minutes, it was like the old school derby, wasn't it? Without the tackling. It was just like going about 200 miles an hour. I couldn't believe how fast it was. And he said after the game, speaking to some reporters, that he was surprised by how intense it was. He knew it was going to be intense in the Premier League, but even in English football, but even that took him by surprise. But I thought he did okay. Bear in mind that it's his first game for the club. He'd have only trained a couple of times with them as well. I think Klopp said afterwards, he just said to him, just be the player that you were at Salzburg, just crack on. And it was interesting. I actually thought he did tire in the second half a little bit, whereas Klopp said, no, it's just because we didn't know what to expect from him, so we decided to sub him. So we brought on Oxlade-Chamberlain, who, again, he's another senior player who did well when he came on. Thought he did all right. I mean, it was interesting that he played up front. That was a bit of a surprise. Against Liverpool, he was obviously played mostly on the right, also popped up on the left. Well, Klopp did say, look, he can also play in a central position. I think most thought it would be in midfield or in the number 10 role or that kind of version of that. So to see him doing the Firmino number 9, in the old school we'd say old school, but it's old new school, false number 9, because nobody says that anymore. To see him in that position was a surprise. Took a little bit while to get going. Had the one chance, didn't he, with the header from Origi's cross, but he didn't. Let's put it this way: he didn't look like somebody who was playing his first game, and I think that's that's the ultimate plaudit you can give to him. He just managed to fit in straight away.
We've seen Klopp do that a few times, Joe. Oxlade-Chamberlain, Gini Wijnaldum have played, kind of unorthodox players in that role up front. But do you think maybe it was just the kind of fitness thing? Stick him there for his first game, let him run around, lead the press, and just get him tuned up for games to come.
Yeah, I suppose so. I agree with Dolly. I think he was bright, sharp. He looks like he's going to be in tune with the way Liverpool play. He wants to get it on the edge of the box and move it on. I thought it was well managed by Klopp. I thought, it was a tough game for him to start in, and it was a quick start, but he got to grips with it quite well and battled hard. I think that was the most impressive aspect of it, is that he just went straight in and just got straight into the way Liverpool play, which is to go and press and to win. There was no lost causes. He won quite a few corners, throw-ins from just pressing people high up the pitch. A bit disappointed he didn't make contact with that header.
Yeah.
I think maybe someone was in front of him, just took his concentration off it. But good management from Klopp. Thought I didn't expect him to start centrally, but it seemed to work. And I think Origi and Elliott doing the sort of hard yards and coming and getting the ball gave him a bit more space to operate in. I was pretty impressed by him. I'm looking forward to seeing what he's going to be like when he can link up with the likes of Salah, Mane and Firmino. I think that's an exciting prospect.
Absolutely. Matt, afterwards, Klopp was obviously asked about Minamino and said he's everything we wish for. It's the player we knew was coming to Liverpool, and he was impressed. How about yourself? You thought he was good?
Yeah, massively so. I might be wrong, but I think just before he came to Liverpool, he had a bit of an injury, and obviously it's the winter break over in Austria as well at the minute, so he's obviously not played competitively for a couple of weeks, and to sort of last as long as he did and do as much running as he did, I thought that was obviously promising. Technically, I was really impressed with him as well. I thought he showed a few touches, and he just... I mean, we said it before, but he just seems like a player who will fit in with what Jurgen Klopp wants to do. He's not been signed for any other reason than he's just the perfect template, really, for somebody who can come in and fulfil a variety of roles, whether that's through the middle. I suspect he probably played him through the middle just because that's the easiest tactically to fit into this Klopp team, rather than sticking him in midfield, say, where the game's going on a bit more around you and that sort of thing. Maybe that was just the easiest option for him to slot in his first game. I thought he did well. Of course, he's going to have to do more and do more things during the game to get in the side ahead of Firmino or do anything like that. But as a starting point in a derby, in that sort of environment, I thought he did absolutely really, really well.
Doyle, going back to your point about that senior spine, I think that was an astute one, and it was interesting that you mentioned Adrian and that, because he's obviously not been here that long, but the fairy tale continues. Another great game, some huge saves in that first half especially. Have Liverpool ever had as dependable a number 2 as him?
Well, I think I've written this story before, basically.
Definitely.
Yeah, I definitely have written this story before. Is that why you've set me up for this one? Thank you. In terms, because he's quite clearly a number 2. He knows that. He knew when he signed. It's not like when you had like Karius and Mignolet, they were both fine to be number 1.
Yeah.
There's no clear number 1 there. Well, there was by the end. But this is different. Yeah, you'd argue that he's Liverpool's best ever number 2 goalkeeper, ever. You know, if you look at some of the other ones that have been there in the past, he won them a trophy. Super Cup. He's played 2 derbies now and got 2 wins. I mean, you don't forget he didn't play. Alisson didn't play in the 5-2 because he'd been sent off against Brighton. When Alisson was injured earlier this season, he played for 11 games, didn't let anybody down. And the one game that they did lose at Napoli, he made an incredible save, like probably Liverpool's best save of the season from was it Mertens or Insigne?
Yeah.
One of those.
Yeah, it was a hell of a save.
So, in that sense, he hasn't let anybody down. I mean, is he the same goalkeeper as Alisson? No. But does he make good saves? Yeah. Is he good with the distribution? He's perfectly fine. Is he? And I think you just mentioned it then. He's a great character in the dressing room, and he's fitted in straight away. And I think that's another thing that when Liverpool, we've spoken so many times about the recruitment of players. They get players with the right character as well. You look at that dressing room, and they all, they obviously don't all massively, they're not all massive mates, because that would never happen. Let's, for example, we don't really like Joe. But when it comes to work, we have to tolerate him. We did that successfully.
But we got family class.
Nosy Safari Park. Come on. Nosy Safari. It's not Park anymore. They dropped Park a while ago. Yeah,
did they?
Yeah. A little bit of info for you there. All right, character. Okay, yeah. So he's the kind of player who just comes straight into that dressing room. And bear in mind that I know we mentioned Alberto Moreno. He was seen as not the Joker, not the Joker, but he was seen as a big character in the dressing room.
Yeah,
we have done it on the podcast where we thought, who's going to replace him? It looks like Adrian just come in straight away. And bear in mind that he wasn't a Liverpool player when the Community Shield took place, and then 5 days later he was coming on against Norwich. So in some ways, a bit like Minamino, he was just thrown straight in there. And he's responded in the same way that Minamino has. And if Minamino responds the same way that Adrian has, then the Liverpool have got themselves a great player for not only the rest of the season, but seasons to come.
His inclusion in the team, Joe, I think that was one of the ones as well when the team sheet dropped. I was a bit like, well, do you have to rest Alisson? He's a goalie, and I know your number 2 needs time, but I was maybe a little bit surprised. If you do want to sneak another senior man in, surely you could have done it in the goalkeeping situation, but Klopp got a spot on again. He played really well. Yeah,
but it's not like putting Keller in, is it? He's so experienced. He's been around the block a few times. I just think his attitude. If you watch him during the game, the way he's talking, the way he was perfect behind that back four, because he was on top of them the entire game, and he just seems such a positive attitude. Everton seems like, Everton's done with a smile. It seems to be the Liverpool way at the moment. There's no anger, is there? Everyone's on side, and everyone, they seem to be a happy camp, don't they? And he just fits in perfectly. I have to say, I never thought he would be this good. I thought that they would struggle to find a number 2 of the same calibre as Mignolet, albeit I know what a lot of people thought about Mignolet, but he was a good goalkeeper. He wasn't a great goalkeeper like Alisson, but he was a good goalkeeper. But Adrian has been everything and more. He's not just a good goalkeeper. He's got that attitude that Liverpool need, and he'll have earned whatever medals he picks up at the end of the season. He more than earned. So I'm delighted for him. And I think, I don't think I had no issues with him playing. I always expected him to play. Always never thought he would play Alisson. I think it's wise to get those second choice goalkeepers playing a little bit of football, because as we saw at the start of the season, if you need them to come in, he's played in so many different atmospheres. The Super Cup, the derby a couple of times now. He'd be well prepared if there's a tense running and they need him for 5 games or so. No one, I don't think we'll be any of us be complaining to see him in that.
Moving a little bit further forward, then Matt, to the back line in front of Adrian. Joe Gomez, he's come back into the first team in the last few weeks, and Liverpool have kept clean sheet after clean sheet. But a different type of role yesterday, where he had to be the one who was truly leading that back line, getting the young lads through, especially after Milner went off. How highly regarded a performance would you class that as?
I think he was absolutely unbelievable, as you say, to come into a side which had so many changes and to lead them and just... I'm going to say it, he reminded me of Van Dijk yesterday. I thought,
Fair.
obviously, he's not the same level, but the way that he led that back line, commanded it, moved out with the ball, it smacked of Virgil van Dijk for me. And I'm not saying he's the same level, but I think in future years, potentially he could be. And I think just the way that he stood up, he showed his leadership. Again, he's only young himself, but to sort of have learnt so much from Van Dijk already, I think it's setting him up perfectly for the rest of his career.
It rubbed off, didn't it? You could see that he'd taken a few things into that game and thought, I'll take that role on and help Phillips through it. Because Phillips had a shaky first 10
20.
to 15. You could see he wasn't quite decisive in some of the headers he was going to, and I think that accumulated in Everton having a few decent chances. But when they settled down, and I think him settling down, Gomez was a massive part of that. And especially when Larouche came on, because the senior man out of that back four disappeared, didn't he? And Gomez had more responsibility put him in again. He was brilliant. Yeah.
Doyle, do you think this is less a question about last night, more about the last few weeks? Has Gomez truly re-established himself as the key partner for Van Dijk? I know it's a difficult one because Matip's absent. He can't really put up much of a fight at the minute, but this reminds me now of how we started last season when we were keeping all those clean sheets. They just clicked back into gear again at the back.
Don't forget at the start of the season, this season, that Gomez was placed alongside Van Dijk because Klopp wants that to be the long-term partnership, and Gomez wasn't particularly good. Matip came in and ended up being very good. And then when Gomez had played a couple of games, he wasn't great against MK Dons. I think there was the Salzburg game as well, where he had a particularly tough time. So then when Matip got injured, Lovren came in, and Lovren straight away hit the ground running. So he did very well. And then, of course, Lovren gets injured, and then Gomez by default comes in. And I think in some ways that's helped him because he's known, right, nobody's going to take my place now. I just need to crack on with this. And with obviously Alisson being back in goal and being back on top form, and one or two other changes in the team and slightly lesser opposition, it has to be said, for a certain period in the league, it's helped Liverpool build the confidence of those clean sheets, because what was it, 13 games without a clean sheet, and it seems the record, like the worst run in such running, like 20 odd years, has gone to 5 clean sheets in a row in the Premier League, one in the FA Cup, they had one in the World Cup final. So the only goal they've conceded in that time, because I'm not counting the Aston Villa game, is the one against Monterrey. It was something. I
think Andrew Beasley tweeted something like 967 minutes.
Just a long time.
If you disregard the Villa game, which we all do.
Yeah, of course.
No one counts the Carabao Cup, do they?
Yeah,
it's all about the FA Cup.
People who don't like the League Cup.
Yeah. Well, that's the back line done and dusted, I think. Moving on to the midfield then, Joe. Gorsty, it was a little throwaway line in his verdict, but expanded on, and I think we eventually stuck it in the headline. It was Adam Lallana. It became a big thing. But Adam Lallana, I don't think it can be kind of underplayed. He did superbly. He took that armband. He led the midfield really, as much as, like we said, Gomez led the back line. I thought he was fantastic. Ghosty calling for contract extension. Would you go along with that?
Yeah, I mean, not just on the back of that performance. I think every time he's been called upon this season, Lallana has done very, very well. Scored a very important goal at Old Trafford. I think it's so easy to forget when these players are absent, isn't it? That they're actually very, very good players, and there's a reason why they play for Liverpool, and there's a reason why Klopp rates them. And to see him come back in and play in the role that he did yesterday and play ever so well, and don't forget, I don't care how bad they are, a very senior Everton team. If that was the full first team and Lallana was playing in that position, we'd still be praising him, but he deserves more praise because the players playing around him. I probably would. I think who do you go out and buy? And I'm sure there are young players that can sort of grow into it, but who do you go out and buy ready-made that can go in and play like Lallana can and has the same amount of experience? How much are you going to pay? You're going to pay £30 million to find someone like that, and to me, especially if Liverpool do go and win the league, wouldn't it be good to keep some of this squad together and keep those tight-knit group together? I think it would, and I mean, it can't hurt an extra year's extension. I get the feeling from Lallana though that he strikes me as the type of guy that would probably want to go and play. So I think it might come as much from him as it does come from Liverpool in terms of he might not want a new deal, but if you could tie him down for another year, I think he's proven this season that he could be very, very useful. And he's proven a lot of us wrong, and that's all this Liverpool squad do, don't they? Every single player that we ever question, they rise above it and they prove us wrong. And it's kind of another reason why you love them, because fair play to them. There's no one that moans, there's no one that cries about not being in the team. They just come into the team and play well.
I think this is his last season. I think he goes in the summer.
I
think he wants to go, and I think Liverpool have to be careful that they don't just keep on offering all. Okay, this isn't picking on Lallana at all, by the way, but we've obviously there's some reports today about Wijnaldum could be going because he's not signed a new contract yet in the last 18 months. Is that they can't just hold on to everybody. I can't remember whether this is right or not, but at Dortmund, perhaps Klopp held on to some of his players a little bit too long because he's got such a close affinity with them, and that's fine. That's human nature, because Jurgen Klopp, if anything, is a very human. I don't know how you can't be a human manager. I
know what you mean.
I think yeah. From that kind of
thinks about the players' welfare and
that kind of thing. But they need to progress, and if you're keeping Lallana for a year, you're keeping Milner for another 2 years, then that's also blocking Curtis Jones coming through and players like that. There is natural, for want of a better phrase, wastage. And at 31 years of 31, is he? Lallana's 31. I think he's still got another big move in him. He'll probably want to go and try abroad, wouldn't he? He'd be great in like La Liga, I reckon. I think he'd be brilliant to be made for that. He could play for probably not Barcelona or Real Madrid, but anyone just a little level below that. You want to go and play for Valencia for a couple of years, wouldn't it? Nice little city.
My best friend Ian Doyle's just. You know what? Get rid of him. Get shot. Get rid of him. Sell him in January.
That's not what I'm saying. Not just picking on Lallana, but Liverpool.
No, you're right.
Just have to be careful. That's why it was interesting that they didn't sign anybody of note. Okay, they signed Harvey Elliott, who played last night, and Adrian. But obviously Adrian was a little bit of a last-minute emergency when Mignolet went. But they didn't make any big signings last summer. There was a reason for that. He felt you could get another year out of this group, which has obviously been proven correct, given the fact they've won nearly every game they played this season. But that won't go on forever. So they'll already be looking at what can they do the next move. And I think they'll believe that at least one, possibly two of the current midfielders won't be there in 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. So they will be looking at the next generation, whether that's a new signing or it is Curtis Jones coming through or people like that, Neco Williams.
Now, Matt, we've mentioned him already, but another word on Pedro Chirivella, because I think he deserves one. Next to Adam Lallana in that midfield, he was fantastic yesterday, and it's a bit of a strange one with him, because like we said, he's 22, and we've seen bits and pieces of him at Liverpool, not least a few years ago, like Doyle mentioned before. He's been away on loan. But what do you think the future holds for him now? Because there's clearly a talent there. I don't know whether he's quite got the graft and the guile to be one of Liverpool's midfield three to break into a first team level, but he's a decent player.
Yeah, he certainly is a decent player. I mean, there's been some talk today that he might get a new contract now and stay at Liverpool for a bit longer. How much truth there is in that, I'm not too sure. But I mean, for me, if I was him, I'd probably be looking at a move to Spain or somewhere like that to go and play regularly. And I think, as well as he did against Everton, I think that would probably suit his game more than being in a Klopp midfield. Just because he's not quite as physical as some of those other players, and you look at the number of options that Klopp's got in his midfield, realistically, how many opportunities is he going to get? And as you say, at the age that he is and the length of time that he's been at Liverpool, maybe it's better for him to move on and go somewhere else. But fair play to him, he's done everything. After yesterday, he's done everything he could to stick around and make the best of his Liverpool career. And if nothing else, yesterday could be, a big highlight for him to look back on at his time at Liverpool if he goes somewhere else and does well. But yeah, I mean, it's a strange situation in the sense that you'd quite like him to stay, but at the same time, you sort of feel like his career probably is better served if he goes somewhere else.
It was a good shop window for him, wasn't it? I thought that in my stuff saying I think everyone's realistic enough to know that's the case. I think he was interesting. I think he's one of these players who'll always be better alongside better players, because we've seen him play for the under-23s, and sometimes you just watch him and you go, it's not happening, is it? It's not happening. He's kind of gone backwards. But then the minute you get him in alongside better players, and we're not, Lallana players like that, he just seems to prosper. Because the one thing against Everton, he was given an awful lot of space, and he just passed them to death. He was just passing them, and that's one thing he's very good at, is passing it. And the work of Jones and Lallana gave him all that time to, and obviously the slowness of Schneiderlin and Sigurdsson gave him all that.
You're quick, isn't it?
Yeah, I know. It gave him the time to just crack on with what he's best at. Whether he'll get that in the Premier League, I don't know, but I agree. La Liga, he's Spanish anyway, isn't he? So he could go back there and with Lallana at Valencia.
I mean, he's turned down a move to Norway in the past, and I think he's probably a level above that.
Famously did that on social media, didn't he? So I'm not going there.
But whether his long-term future is at Liverpool, I'm not too sure.
We shall see. Well, Joe, I think we've given pretty much everyone a mention, but just to round up all the ones, we perhaps haven't gone into detail on, but Neco Williams.
Who, sorry? Neco Williams.
Not Neco, Neco?
No, not Necro Williams either.
Necro. Certainly not Necro. Mr. Williams, Yasser Larouci, all the others, the youngsters who we saw, either starting or coming off the bench. What does that say about the academy setup at the minute and the kind of spirit that's imbued right throughout the club? They came in and they looked the part in the first team.
They've got the right manager, haven't they? The manager, a manager who clearly, if you're in the academy, you're looking through thinking that there are opportunities. If I play well enough, if I apply myself, if I buy into what they're doing, you get chances. And I think Neco Williams especially, I mean, Yasser Larouci put in a hell of a performance, certainly in the situation that he was thrown in. I mean, imagine the nerves seeing Milner go down. He'd have been thinking, this is going to be me. I've got to come straight on in, no warm up, get on the pitch, and he did very well. Thought physically he was very good, and to be honest, I think I could have had a decent game against Walcott yesterday, but I thought he equipped himself well. But Neco Williams, just feel like he's got something about him. I feel like he on the ball, he uses the ball really, really well, and he's not afraid to take the ball under pressure and to give the ball to players under pressure as well. He sort of trusts his passing, and I thought he looked great. I think of all, obviously Jones looks one hell of a prospect, and we all know everything about Harvey Elliott, but I think Neco Williams looks a real prospect at right back, and he's just a bit unlucky that he's got Trent ahead of him, who can be Liverpool's right back for as long as he wants, really, if he wants to stay and be a right back rather than a midfielder. So I thought Neco Williams was fantastic. And I think the academy setup, I mean, they probably don't get that much credit, do they? Because they're not massive names. Barry Lutus, Alex Inglethorpe, but they do really good work. And they've got Liverpool's academy.
Neil Critchley as well.
Neil Critchley as well, yeah. And they've got Liverpool's academy moving again, because think back, 20 years ago, or less than that, Benitez, Houllier, everyone was trying to revamp it, weren't they? Everyone was trying to give it an overhaul. Everyone was trying to bring in their own people who would get things moving and bring through players, and they've ever so quietly just done it, and it's great to see.
I think Matt's seen, as well as I've seen, a lot of all of those youngsters at under 23s levels and under 18 level actually, and they just played the way that they would normally play. I mean, Larouci in particular, he came on first half and he was bombed down the wing, sometimes caught out of position, quite strong, fast. It's interesting in the second half because while Everton didn't create that many chances in the first half, the ones that they had were quite good ones. A lot of them came from Walcott, who I know was being absolutely blasted for his second half performance, and particularly that cross that went out for the throw-in, which was just, you could write a thesis on that, to be honest. It sums up everything about Everton.
You see the one that came down to, and obviously he was on the touchline, and he was obviously trying to touch it back to the right back, and he just nudged it out, straight out of play.
But the point with Larouci there, clearly Klopp had said at half-time, or somebody said at half-time, a little bit of a tactical switch, because in the second half, Walcott didn't do anything, and Larouci was just right on top of him all the time, and he probably didn't go forward as much, and it obviously shows that they're learning. I mean, the other thing about Williams, we talk about his crossing and all this, his passing, you mentioned it. There's a few bits in the second half where he was covering across the centre-backs defensively, and that's something that, for was he 18? 19? He's 18, isn't he? 19, sorry, 19-year-old to be doing that and cover, that shows you that, the kind of player that he is. He's able to read the game. He's got the energy to do it, which admittedly at 19, I think all of us had the energy to do that. For some of us, 19 was a very long time ago, I can tell you that. That he's able to do that, have the wherewithal, and he just does seem to be that kind of player that whatever level he's played at, he just doesn't seem to change. He's just exactly the same player. Like Trent was the same, to be honest.
That's a sign of a good player, isn't it?
Yeah. Harvey Elliott's the same. Yeah. Curtis Jones is the same. That goal he scored a similar one against Napoli in the Youth League this year. He scored loads like that for the under-18s and quite a couple for the under-23s, I think. But that's just him doing what he normally does, which is why they're able to just fit into the team so easily.
It probably helps him as well that they're alongside these players that they've played with for so long, and they know the movements, they know where they're going to be, and and it just, as you say, it was just like watching the academy, but at Anfield.
Absolutely. Right, well, moving on then, and Doyle, I'll go to you on this one first. I do need to read this out from my notes, this bit, because
you've read everything from your notes. You haven't taken your eyes off your notes.
Just minorly consulted.
What kind of medicinal quip is this?
No. This is just straight up. Yeah, no Calpol will be swigged in the production of this next 30 seconds. Now, the reward for this, obviously, no one would have wanted a replay. No Liverpool fan would have wanted to lose a derby to Everton, of course, but Liverpool now face the prospect of what I think will be 4 games in 10 days.
Yep.
So you've got Wolves away Thursday the 23rd. The FA Cup game must be the Sunday, 26th.
Has to be,
yeah. West Ham away on the Wednesday, and then Southampton at home in the league again on the Saturday the 1st of Feb. Klopp's spoken about this at length, the issue of fixture scheduling, and I think he said the other day that the festive season isn't over because the games have just carried on coming thick and fast. But once again, there's more piling up in January.
Yes, but hopefully they'll have a few players back. Oxlade-Chamberlain's obviously back, and by the end of those, you'd imagine Fabinho could be back, Lovren could be back, Matip, not entirely convinced about. Who else is injured? Shaqiri could be back. Shaqiri could be back, and they'll have Minamino up to speed, and obviously, all the players, the senior players who weren't playing yesterday, have all been rested, so they'll be okay for the next game. That's Tottenham, isn't it? They got Tottenham and United before that.
Yeah.
I don't really have a problem with any of that. It would have been interesting had it been 1-1 with about a minute to go, where the Klopp would have just ran on the pitch and just belted one into his own goals, or just like subbed Adrian for nobody, just to make sure there was no replay. But you can take players off if you want.
Can you just withdraw a player?
I think so. Yeah. I think it's only if you go over the number, isn't it? You've got to have at least 7 players on the pitch. If you have less than that, then you might get into trouble by deliberately.
But they weren't injured. You could just take him off.
I think so. Could be a tactical switch. Yeah. Anyway, what was the question?
Easy run, end of January.
Yeah.
Are you concerned?
No, not really, because they will have more players back. Some of these youngsters have proven themselves, like the FA Cup game against, as I say, Wolves or Man United away, because it will be. They'll play more or less, not probably around about the same team. Maybe you won't have Nat Phillips there. You'll probably go back to Germany. You'll have one of the centre-backs back. So the team will probably be even stronger than it is there. I mean, Brewster, we assume, isn't going to be involved because it looks like he's going to Swansea on loan. So, yeah, it'll be interesting. I don't have any worries, as long as there aren't another 3 injuries in that time. But then, that's what happens. That's why they have these squads. And, Liverpool have been hampered by injuries more than most, as much as some of the critics would have you believe that they haven't had anybody injured.
It's very true. Joe, I mean, whatever way you look at it, January feels like it's going to be pivotal. Like, all those games, and like Doyle said, you've got Spurs away, you've got United at home in the league as well. Do you feel like the next few weeks will define the potential ambitions for Liverpool this season?
No, not particularly. I think only because I think Liverpool will be so comfortable where they're at. They're 13 points clear. They've got a game in hand, and Tottenham United coming up. But I've no doubt that they'll know how to manage those 2 games. I think if you look past those 2 games, I think they'll be fine. I think the hard yards were done in December, which was a chaotic month and was always going to be tough. And they lost 1 game, and it was one that they practically threw, didn't they? Because they didn't have anyone else. So. I don't think January, it could have been more pivotal, but I think they've been so good and so consistent that now it just feels like another month. And if Liverpool can treat every month now, just get through them, manage each game, which I'm no doubt they can, they'll win this league.
And after that Southampton game, Matt, there will be the winter break. So even though the fixtures are coming thick and fast, there's a bit of an end in sight for the Reds.
There is. I do think January is the sort of hardest month, certainly on paper. Obviously, it depends on other things like suspensions and injuries and stuff like that. But yeah, I think if Liverpool can get to the end of January, still with a 13-ish point lead at the top, I think they'll be absolutely fine. And I think they're never going to admit it publicly, but I think they're more than happy with where they're at. The progression is well above what any of us thought might be the case at this stage of the season. So whatever happens really in this month, I think Liverpool are, they are, aren't they? They're ahead of where any of us thought they would be. So absolutely no complaints, no worries really.
Absolutely. Well, just to see us out then, Doyle, I feel like Gorsty. No, absolutely not. Well, not yet anyway.
We've got Paul Gorst giving us his rendition
Some might
of
say.
racism. Some might say.
Well, Paul Gorst is going to be mentioned because I feel like he broke the dam the other day in the sense that in his verdict he mentioned the I word, which was Invincibles. What I want to put to you is, what do you think should be the extent of Liverpool's ambitions from here on this season? Do you think words such as Invincibles, the prospect of going unbeaten, a double, a treble, what do you think they'll have their eyes on at this stage?
Well, they're going to get beat, so the Invincibles is out. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if they lost one of the next 2 games. And that's just not being defeatist or being me. I just think, you look at the fixture list, Everton, Tottenham, Man United, 3 in a row. Tottenham away from home at a stadium they've never played. The whole Mourinho effect. I know Tottenham aren't very good and they haven't got Harry Kane, but Man United aren't very good and they got a point against Liverpool. And United will be up for it at Anfield, and they've got a good. I know Liverpool won that fixture last year. They've got a good record at Anfield, so they'll be 2 tricky games. And then once you get past that, you've got Wolves away, who'll be up for it after what happened. What was it? The other week, wasn't it? It wasn't very long ago. And then you got David Moyes lying in wait for West Ham, the rejuvenated West Ham, which of course was a ground where Liverpool drew last year. So basically, I've just ruined the entire January there, haven't I? Yeah, basically. What was the question again? Okay, what's the extent? Well, they're going to win the league, I think. Yeah. I think, and if they don't win the league from this position, they'll never be able to forgive themselves. The only team that can beat Liverpool now is themselves, whether that's through getting injuries or just taking their eye off the ball for whatever reason. But they've played 35 games now this season, I think it is, and they've shown absolutely no signs of taking their eye off the ball there because the Community Shield went to penalties. They won the Super Cup. They won the Club World Cup, the top of the league by 1 million points. They're through to the FA Cup 4th round, through to the Champions League knockout stages. Could have done much more, if we're being honest. Could have done much more. And as Joe said, the League Cup game was one that they were more or less forced to throw, which was just ridiculous. And I think not enough's been made of the fact they were forced into that position. I think Liverpool have just been quite happy to go with that, to be honest. But if it had been another team, I think they'd have made a big hoo-ha about it. Just win the league. Champions League isn't going to be easy against Atletico Madrid. I think we all knew that anyway. You can see that the priority, as much as they don't say, is the league. They want to win that, and anything else that comes after that is a bonus. But if they do get through Atletico Madrid, they could even more or less won the league by the time the quarterfinals come around. So that would give them a bit of an opportunity to then go a bit bigger in the Champions League. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's for that Champions League, those Champions League games, that's when players are rotated out for that.
Joe, are you daring to dream a little bit more than Doyle? Or
about Invincibles? I just don't think there's any point. I think with stuff like that, I don't care if Liverpool lose 5 games between now and the end of the season, as long as their rivals lose more and they win the league. That there is one target.
Could lose 5 games and still win.
There's one target and one target only, and that is to finally get this monkey off their back and win the league. And once that's out of the way, then we can worry about being invincible and all that other nonsense. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, does it? That Arsenal team drew pretty much half their games, didn't they? They weren't even that good. But in all seriousness, Liverpool should just worry about winning the league, and everything else will come naturally. If they're going to be invincible, they'll do it by worrying about winning the league, won't they? Because they will just be professional and approach every game the way they have done so far. So I don't think you think halfway through the season, can we be invincible? And that's just silly. You think that with 3 games to go if you've not lost before. So and do you know what? They should have a good crack at the Champions League again. Why not? I don't think many sides will relish coming to Anfield. I think they'll play like champions of Europe. Well, they do play like champions of Europe now, so they'll believe in themselves. So they should have a good crack at that again. So that should be their ambitions, and worry about the rest as and when it comes. If they're still in the FA Cup in the semi-finals, then go for it. But otherwise, don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. Matt Addison, the voice of reason, final word to you.
Second time we called.
Are you worried about it?
Unreasonable.
You have.
No, to be fair, I completely agree. I think priority number 1, of course, is the Premier League title. I think they're going to do that. I think probably get over 100 points as well.
That's a big shout.
I don't see any reason why not. I think
on target.
Yeah, exactly. More than on target. I think probably in terms of the invincibility, it's not a huge thing, but of course it'd be nice to do it. I think potentially the biggest hurdle with that would be if the league title is wrapped up with 2 or 3 left and they've got one eye on a Champions League semi-final or something like that. Maybe they'll take their eye off the ball, but I think, get the Premier League title wrapped up, go as far as they can in the FA Cup. I know it's not a huge priority, but if the team that played yesterday can beat Everton, then who's to say they can't beat another team and get through there. Champions League, Atletico Madrid's going to be difficult, but Liverpool are champions of Europe, so why not?
Oh, on that positive note, we'll leave it there. I'll absolutely take that. Yeah, Matt is right. They're European champions, they're world champions, and the kids are all right too. So everything's in place.
You have that written
If you can read my writing, all the best. Yes, we will leave it there. We'll be back on Friday, of course, to look ahead to Spurs. Thank you for listening.
I can't believe you have to have them all written down. None of them. Just how long in advance do you prepare for this podcast?